It's Friday, January the 27th, and I'm in Dunkeld at the home of Richard Heath, who's behind the camera, and helping me make this film, which is one of a series I've been doing, sharing with you some of my ideas about systematics, way of thinking developed by John Bennett from his work with Gurdjieff. This time I'm going to introduce you to a very particular symbol which was developed by Gurdjieff, called the Enneagram. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, I'm just going to show you what it looks like. And you see it's quite a remarkable appearance, fairly complex, but quite beautiful and elegant. We're going to look into what it might mean for us. These systems or ideas are patterns of meaning which we can use to make sense of what we know, what we experience, and can do. Now, the particular focus of what the Enneagram addresses is something very important in our lives. I call it a completing process. Something which makes something happen, which creates something, which brings something into being, but also renews itself. So it's not only making a product, but renewing its capacity to make products. There are all sorts of things which come into this category. The basic way we're probably familiar with or can think about is that of any living organism. It is living, acting, producing results and manifestations while maintaining its own being and structure. So you picture perhaps a living cell or an organism as a possible model. Now, in human affairs, we do such things through technology and our culture. So we do such things as manufacture objects, we do such things as create plays, and all of that kind of thing, which belong to us as conscious beings, but they still have that same character of a self-renewing, completing process. This is where we start from. Forgive me my very unelegant circle. Is just the bare idea of the completing process and the self-renewing process. So imagine that there is a flow which returns the apparatus back to its same state, so the same process can happen again. This is quite similar, in fact, to how we now picture living organisms as eddies of flow of energy. The sort of flow of energy comes back into itself, so within that flow of energy there is an inner life. Now this simple dot at the top here, that one item, represents, if you like, the identity of this process. Think of it as you will, as simply the name or the genetic code or whatever it is, but it's an identifier which makes it what it is. So here's the bare outline. This is what it is, this is what it encompasses, and we know there's a sort of circulation. Now in the systematics we have a very, perhaps it might seem to you first of all, very naive, very simple progression. You see, we start from thinking in terms of one, then we go on to thinking in terms of two. Okay. So now we add on to this picture a second point here. And we're going to add something else more in a minute. And what can this possibly mean? Well, there are many ways of reading such a simple picture, but I'm going to suggest one of them, as this is the intrinsic nature of what this whole is, this active living whole is? Well, this is the extrinsic nature. In other words, every living organism is made out of stuff which it gets from what's not itself. You know, it puts itself together out of we eat, we breathe, and we know ultimately our atoms have come from distant supernova stars. You know. But so there is that sense in which it's similar to being outer, similar to being inner, but these general conceptual words can't cover all the intricacies, all the possibilities of our actual experience. So forgive me if I use just provisional names for them, and hope to develop what these things mean in specific contexts. One form of this, one kind of labeling I want to put up into it, which refers us back more to human activity, where we have values and purposes in a more evident sense than we find in the external physical world. I want you to call this the actual and the ideal. Now these are the qualitative words belonging to our human conceptions, but they do say something which is pretty universal. You know, we have the sense of an intrinsic as a pattern, which is roughly what we mean by an ideal, where everything really is fitting together, which absolutely corresponds, is in harmony. And we have the actuality, we're involved in a world which accidents happen, processes meet, collide, and it's the realm of quantities, and it's the realm of temporal processes, and so on. And very probably I can take for granted you have some idea what it means in difference between the ideal and the actual. And us as human beings are, in some sense, constantly poised between these two. Now then follows a sense, and my dotted line, of there being also two sides to the process. Because we have this arrow, and then this arrow, part of the circulation, and it leads to a prospect where we have both a movement like this and a symmetry, left and right, or an interchange, left and right. So, take account of this, put a horizontal part across, like that. And, imagine that within every living being there's a sort of pulse. The Stoic philosophers of Greece had this wonderful term, tonike kinesis, which means tensional motion. It's this inner vibration which keeps things alive and with capacity to meet challenges and evolve and so on. I'm going to revert to the human context more than the natural context. And again, these two can be given various appellations. But I'm going to divide the two sides, left and right, into two aspects of our experience. I'm going to call it seeing and doing. There is that wonderful passage in, I believe it's one of the Vedas of India, which speaks about two birds yoked on the self-same tree. One sees but acts not. The other acts but doesn't see. So often these two are divided in us, separate from each other, but if you have a truly completing process, they meet together.